Hello everybody, my name is Mike Hopkins and I am going to present how to install a VSAN 6 cluster hosted on a vSphere 6.5 environment or in a vSphere 6.5 environment. Right here is my lab environment. I'll just run through the components real quick. I am RDP'd into my jump box and that's the IP address, but the network that we're going to be dealing with is 192.168.137.0. That's the gateway. This is DC01. You can see over here, this is my domain controller as well as DNS. It's 192.168.137.241. And then I have the virtual center appliance, which I deployed, vcsa.fhlab-leg.local, and that's right up here. This is this vCenter. And I'm going to go ahead and create these hosts, ES6i hosts, virtualized, but I'll present them to the vCenter as physical. So this is my physical host as well. I think I skipped over that. This is a physical ESX server, which everything is going to be hosted on. It's going to be a nested ESXi environment, but everything's going to, in this data center, I separate so I know what VMs actually the physical host has. And right here, let's look at the summary. It's a Dell PowerEdge R710. It's got 48 gigs of RAM and 16 logical processors, 8 real processors, and I think about 830 gigs of storage. So that's it. It's the R710 I got for $230. It's been working great. Highly recommended. Obviously, I recommend Dell's because, I'm very favorable to them. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and over here and right-click, new virtual machine, and we're going to create 3 ESX hosts. Create new virtual machine next. We're going to call this one ESXi01. We're going to put it on the physical. 829 capacity. All right. Next, it's going to be compatible with ESXi 6.5 and later. I'm going to hit next. And for the operating system, I'm going to put other, and I also want to scroll down here and put ESXi 6.5. You're going to get a warning that's not compatible, but we're in a lab environment. No big deal. Okay, here's where you need to pay attention here. If you really want to do this in the lab, you need to change number of CPUs to 2. ESX requires that, as well as you want to expose hardware assisted virtualization to the guest. Check that off, and down here we're just going to give this one 12 gigs of RAM, and we're going to change the hard drive to 20 gigs. And then we're going to go ahead and scroll down here. We're going to select, for the CD-ROM, we're going to select a data store ISO, and I'm going to browse to my ISOs folder. And then VMware Hypervisor, we can expand it out here, see the whole most of it. VMware Hypervisor, like that. We're going to connect it on power on. Then we're going to go over to VM options. We go to boot options, and we're going to make sure the next time it boots up, it's going to go into the BIOS so we can tell the VM to boot off the CD-ROM. Next, finish. There we have it, virtual ESXi01. Go ahead and power this on. I like that. See, it's in the BIOS. We're going to say, hey, boot off CD-ROM, please. And there you go. There's the ESXi installer. I'm going to install ESX, and I'm going to configure the IP addresses. I'm going to configure this IP address for 01. I'm going to create another one with this IP address, and yet another one, number 3, and give it this IP address. I'm going to give it the DNS of this. So they already put the DNS mappings in there, and gateway of 1. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pause this right now. I'm going to come back when they're all successfully loaded up. Thank you. Okay, everybody. All right, we're back, and now that we have both, or excuse me, all three ESXi servers built, let's review them real quick. Again, these are virtual. That's ESXi 01 with 192.168.137.251. ESXi 02 has 252, and ESXi 03 has IP address of .253 last octet. All right, so now we're going to go back into Virtual Center, and we're going to go up to this blank data center. I just went and right-clicked over here and said Create Data Center. So now what we're going to do, one second, we're going to go ahead and add these hosts to the data center. And from the perspective of the Virtual Center, they're going to be physical hosts. I'm going to put in VSXi01. Next, we're going to type in the root as well as the root password. Excuse me. Next, now it says yes. Go ahead and say yes to import the certificate and add the host into the FH Lab data center. Next, we're going to use the evaluation license. It'll expire in 60 days. I plan on rebuilding this lab way before then, though. Disable lockdown mode. And VM location is the FH Lab data center. Next, and finish. Okay, so while that happens, I'm going to go ahead and add the VESXi02 and 03. Excuse me. I'm going to add 03. Now again, when you're deploying Virtual Center appliance host, what you need to have in place from the get-go is the DNS infrastructure, whether it's AD integrated or not. Let me click finish. Okay, now what we're going to do while this completes is we're going to go ahead and right click over this data center. We're going to put select new cluster. And here we're going to create our new vSAN cluster. I'm just going to name it vSAN test. We're going to turn on vSAN. We're going to leave DRS and vSphere HA turned off right now. Once your vSAN is configured and all good to go, you can go ahead and enable them if you have a licensing and you so desire. Hit OK. And then you see the test there. Now, before we add these hosts into this cluster, I'm going to go ahead and add some hard drives to the virtual ESX servers. Now, as you recall, when we installed it, we installed a 20 gig local data server, which we put on the OS. For for vSAN, and this counts in physical production deployments, your hard drives that you use, you want to have non-rated. You want them to be passed through from the BIOS all the way up to the operating system. They just need to be raw disk, if you will, and they shouldn't have any RAID overhead or anything like that on it. You want all the disk management to be managed by the vSAN cluster. All right. So in this case, in the lab, we're just going to right-click, edit settings. We're going to create 2 hard drives. We're going to put this one as 50. We're going to use this one as a capacity tier. Then we're going to go ahead and add another one. We're going to put this one as the mock cache flash drive. Hit OK. We're going to go down and do it for ESXi 02 and ESXi 03. Edit settings. New device. 50 gigs. 10 gigs. Okay, so what we're going to do now is, if all these were in a cluster, we could just do this once. We would just right-click over the cluster and select storage, rescan storage. Since there's no hosts in there, we're just going to do it one by one. We could put them in and then do it, but let's just go with this current track here. Right-click storage, rescan storage. Yeah. And as you can see, these yellow exclamation marks, by the way, are because I enabled the ESXi shell as well as SSH. So it doesn't like that. And vSphere in general complains about everything, which is good and or bad depending on your disposition. But I definitely appreciate it, at least obviously in lab environment. So. I'm just going to go back to ESXi 01. We're going to go to configure and just to make sure that it sees the new hard drive that we put in. Tell like we're going to add a VMS data store. Even though we're not, we just want to make sure that it sees them, and it does. Got the 10 gig and the 50 gig. Okay, so it's going to go down to number 2 and 3 and do the same thing. Pretty sure it'll see them both. Okay, see them both. Side note, all these data stores, when you deploy ESX, come with data store, and they're obviously you get duplicate names. Best practice is to rename them something locally that specifies them local to that ESX host. We're just not going to bother with that right now. Okay, there we go. Sees them, all 3 of them. Okay. So next step is to add all 3 of these hosts into the vSAN test cluster. So at this point, I'm just going to drag and drop them up. 1, 2, 3. It's going to give them a minute here. It usually takes a little bit to catch up here. There you go. Okay. So you were getting these errors because I essentially just drag and drop them too fast. But now that we see here, we have all these hosts added to the vSAN test cluster. Now, let's see the errors here. Well, these errors, let's take care of these first real quick. Basically, we'll go over to monitor. I'm going to suppress these warnings and say that your shell and your consoles are open for access. That's fine. That was by my design, so I'm going to suppress those warnings. But it's not going to get rid of the vSAN network not configured and host cannot communicate with one of the other hosts in the vSAN cluster. That's because the network's not configured. So, a bit redundant, but that's good that it tells us all that, and we'll take care of that in just a minute. Press those warnings. I'm going to suppress these warnings. So in the interest of time, I'm just going to might blow through some of these warnings. But just so we see what the vSAN currently looks like, we go up to the vSAN cluster level. We want to go over to monitor. And here's where all the good stuff is, vSAN. It'll tell you the health, and I'm sure we're going to get some errors here. Yeah. Okay, so we have some failed network. Basically, these yellows basically, in essence, probably need to update some stuff, and as well as it's not certified hardware, right? Because we're just obviously on a virtualized lab environment. So that's where you're going to get some of those warnings. But we'll just move on from there. We do have to correct this network, and so we're going to go back and do that. But I just want to reiterate, if you go up to the top level cluster object and you go to monitor, you ever go to vSAN, and that's where you're going to see all the good stuff in the health. And you can update it, retest it, and as long as everything here is green and good to go, this will tell you everything you need to know how to configure the vSAN. All right, so we're going to go over here to the first ESXi server, and we're going to go over to configure. We're going to go down to networking. We're going to highlight our virtual switch. Switch 0, these are all local switches. You can obviously put on a DVS switch as well, but down in Dirty Lab, we're going to just go ahead and operate with local switching. Switch 0 now. I want to point out here that in the past I tried to put on a new VMNIC card, tie that to a new switch, new port group, and to a unique VMK kernel adapter. That didn't work out when I tried to enable vSAN and vMotion traffic on it. So what I did for this lab is I put all the traffic, vSAN, VM kernel, and the management all in the same VMK kernel adapter. Now in the real world, depending on how you're going to design your network, you don't have to do that. You can have a real physical NIC tied to a real physical switch or a virtual switch port group onto a VMK, and everything should work fine. In fact, it has worked fine in the past for me. But in this case, in the lab, since it's virtualized, I believe, we're just going to go to the VM kernel adapters. We're going to select VMNIC 0. And we're going to enable vSAN and vMotion traffic on it. Now, like I said, in the real world, you might have another VMK1 and a VMK2, one that handles the vSAN traffic, the other one that handles the vMotion traffic, and that can map up to one or more physical network adapters. Okay, so in this case, we're just going to go to Edit. We're going to enable vMotion, and we're going to enable vSAN. Hit OK. And we're going to go down to number 2 and do the same thing. And then we're going to go to number 3, do the same thing again. Okay. So now we're going to go back up to our vSAN test, and I might be clicking too fast, so bear with me here. And we're going to go over to our monitor vSAN, and we give it 10 seconds and then retest it. Okay. Let's retest it. And there we go. The failure is gone. They can communicate with each other. All right, so the next step, we're going to go ahead and actually configure the disk for vSAN. Let me pause it here and get my ducks in a row. So just bear with me, and I'll be back in 1 minute. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and configure the stores for the VSAN. So we're going to go over to configure, and again we're on the VSAN cluster object. We're going to go to disk management, highlight that, this host, it's already highlighted. We're going to go up here where it says claim disk, and we're going to click over claim disks. Okay, so here we go. We see the two raw disks that are presented to the ESXi host. We're going to highlight this one. This is going to be capacity. We're going to claim it for capacity tier. We're going to get some ugly errors here. We're going to go up here and we're going to say, hey, make this 30 gig. I thought I made it 10. Okay, it's combining all three of them. I'm going to make this one flash disk. Now you see it's combining them, and it sees it's adding up all the disks, right? The 350 disks and the 310 disks to make 30, and the 350 disks to make 150. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and claim this for the cache tier. Okay, and now configuration is correct. Now again, these are all virtual DMDKs. In the real world, you might have a hybrid, which is, different disks together, or you can have all flash, what have you. But again, this is hybrid, so we're going to go ahead and click OK. And here's the cool part. It's going to go ahead and configure all three hosts, because it saw that everything was identical. So it's going to go down and configure everything, and then it'll create the vSAN data store. So let's just hang on here and watch the wonderful, beautiful progress of recent task window. You can see down here, it's creating this there. Looks like everything is complete. Do want to find out what that red X is there, or red exclamation mark is. But basically, this group 1, 2, and 3. Okay. I'm going to go over to monitor and see what this is complaining about. Physical disk. All right. Yeah. Retest went to warning. Okay, so basically it's had to wait for everything to update there. Go ahead, I'll bite. What is this? What is this complaining about? And nothing, we're just going to wait until it's done. So essentially that's it. We're completed. Now we're going to go ahead and put on a test VM, and I'll show you that you can actually add a virtual machine to this cluster. Just 1 minute, please. We're going to retest this to refresh everything. Okay. Curious why this grayed out, but I'm just going to go ahead and log out of the virtual center, and I'm going to go ahead and log back in just to give it a Java refresh, and then we'll go back and see what else we got here. Okay, so type VSAN03 exclamation mark disappear. Let's see if we can create a new virtual machine, and we can. I think most of the audience would be familiar with Java, and sometimes you gotta get out of stuff, get it back in, and refresh a lot. Create new virtual machine. We're not going to put an OS right now. We're just going to go ahead and make sure that we can put an OS on there. Base lab. Make sure it sees that we can write to the vSAN data store. It's not in DRS mode. For this cluster, you can also enable the HA DRS, right? I can go back and do that. But right now, we're just going to deploy a VM. And most important, does it see the VM data store? And it looks like here it does. Now, depending on the storage policy, the vSAN storage policy, well, I can explain that later, but right now, let's just go ahead and put it on there. It comes with a default vSAN storage policy up here in management, which is basically I don't remember the exact configuration, but it has some redundancy, so I'll address that in a later post. But let's just see if we can actually deploy a VM here. And I have a Windows 2012 ISO. I don't think I'm going to deploy it in this session, but definitely want to make sure that we can write to the vSAN data store. Keep everything default. Next, finish, and then see if it's completed. All right, let's see if we can actually boot it up and it actually gets to a BIOS level. All right, so there you have it. Yep, it's going to get to the DHCP. Can't find anything. Has no operating system, but it does show that we did write to the vSAN data center. So let's go down here and data store, see if we actually see the VMDK files. Now, when browsing vSAN data store, notice it is a bit slower, but again, this is a test lab, so there we have it. Okay, all the VMDKs and all that good stuff. All right, let's do another test. Make sure we can write a new folder. For instance, now typically you want to put ISOs on a local storage or quote-unquote non-performance related storage, right? But there we go, folks. That's pretty much how you install a vSAN cluster. Now, depending on where you're at, if you need more capacity, the whole logic behind a vSAN cluster, one of the points of logic is that you can increase capacity quite simply. So you quite simply get another host configured, like in this case, one of these hosts, and then you just pop into the cluster, boom, everything gets, all capacity gets added. So again, I'm Mike Hopkins. If you have any questions or comments, please reach me at mike@emailtransfer. And again, just to self-promote Dell, that this is on a Dell R710 used, and it's working out great. So thank you, everybody, and have a great day. Thank you.